What's up guys, this is Ultimate iDevice Vids, and with the release of iOS 15 Beta 2, today in this video we're going to be doing a battery drain test comparing iOS 15 Beta 2 to iOS 15 Beta 1 on all iPhone generations. And of course, it should go without saying that because we're testing beta firmwares in this video, these results are not reflective of future beta releases of iOS 15 or the final release of iOS 15. Also, keep in mind that the App Store applications we're using throughout this test haven't had any dedicated iOS 15 updates yet, as of course iOS 15 is still in beta. So just keep in mind that this is only for the first and second beta of iOS 15 with the current public versions of applications that are available as of recording these respective tests. And as usual, the very same iPhones were used for both iOS version battery drain tests. I first did this test on iOS 15 Beta 1, and then all these iPhones were updated to the new iOS 15 Beta 2, and I performed the exact same test again. And of course, as usual, we're using the base model phone from each generation, as including the Pro Plus and SE models would just be a little too chaotic. And alright, with iOS 15 Beta 2 on the bottom and iOS 15 Beta 1 on the top, as you can see, True Tone and Night Shift are disabled on all these devices in both instances, in addition to auto brightness. And in terms of the battery capacities, they're all pretty high. They're not all at 100%, but once again, as I always say, the point of these videos are not to compare the phones to one another, but the iOS versions to one another. And once again, it's the same iPhones being used for both tests. And of course, the brightness has been set to the exact same amount for all these devices on both iOS version tests using a lux meter, and the volume is turned down on all of them. And alright, so turning off the power source that these devices are connected to in both instances, we're going to get rid of the cables, and we're going to kick things off as usual with 1 hour of YouTube video streaming. And of course, streaming the same video on all of the devices in both instances at 1080p quality for once again an hour. And checking in after an hour of YouTube, there's no big surprises here. As you can see, things are performing very similar. So we'll move on to Instagram next. So of course, looking at stories and posts for an hour. And checking in after Instagram, as you can see, very similar results here. Things are performing very evenly between these two. And this is definitely a good thing to see. If you guys saw my last iOS 15 Beta 1 versus iOS 14 battery drain test, you may remember that iOS 15 Beta 1 performed very well in comparison to 14. So with Beta 2, things continuing in the same direction, again, that's a good thing to see. So as usual, we're moving on to 1 hour of Minecraft next. And as I normally do, because I can only interact with so many devices at a time, for the first 30 minutes I interact with the 3 newest devices, and for the second 30 minutes I interact with the 3 oldest devices. So all the devices get the same amount of interactive gameplay versus idle time in the game. So 30 minutes in here, we'll switch to the older devices. And checking in after Minecraft, as usual with Minecraft, the devices did lose quite a lot of battery percentage throughout that hour, but once again performing very comparably as to be expected yet again. Love to see it. So we'll keep things moving with our web browsing test next. In Safari, of course, we're going to be loading new web pages and scrolling through web pages for the first 30 minutes on apple.com and for the second 30 minutes on theverge.com. And if you guys are running iOS 15 Beta 2, I'd be curious to know if you guys notice any battery life differences in comparison to Beta 1. Be sure to share down below in the comment section. Also, what do you guys think about the new Safari redesign on iOS 15 as well? I'd be curious to hear about that. But anyways, after the full hour of web browsing, as you can see, results are still looking very comparable at this point. And next, we're going to do a little more gaming, this time in Subway Surfers. So we're going to play 30 minutes of Subway Surfers total. And once again, for the first 15 minutes, I'm going to interact with the 3 newest devices. And for the second 15 minutes, we're going to interact with the 3 oldest devices. And interestingly enough, on iOS 15 Beta 2, just on the home button style devices specifically, I had some weird glitches with Subway Surfers. As you can see there, the character would kind of freeze occasionally, and the only way that I'd be able to fix this is just to completely kill and relaunch the application. I assume this is because, of course, we're running a very early beta firmware. Once again, as I mentioned, these applications haven't had any dedicated updates for iOS 15, as again, it's still in beta. I had to relaunch Subway Surfers on the 6S 3 times, and on the iPhone 7 times, and on the iPhone 8 2 times. So definitely a strange thing to see, but again, you never know what to expect with a beta firmware, as I always say. And checking in after Subway Surfers, once again, numbers still very comparable. It's possible that some of the older devices maybe lost a little more percentage because I kept having to relaunch the app because of that glitch, but doesn't look like it had too much of an effect, as you can see. Anyways, we're going to move on over to Temple Run next for 10 minutes of gameplay with ads appearing in between each round of the game. And I noticed the iOS 15 Beta 2 iPhone 6S was very laggy when launching Temple Run. I've noticed this specifically happens with the 6S when it's very low on battery, so as to be expected at 4 hours and 39 minutes in, in. Once again, the 6S on iOS 15 Beta 2 was the first device to die. But all right, so after Temple Run checking in on all the devices here, things are still looking very even, with the iPhone 7 and iPhone 8 definitely getting down there in terms of the battery percentage. So we'll head on over to PUBG for an hour of gameplay. And of course, you guys already know, for the first 30 minutes, we'll interact with the 3 newest devices, and for the second 30 minutes, we'll interact with the 3 oldest. And the iPhone 6S on iOS 15 Beta 1 was struggling to launch PUBG, so as to be expected. And like I said earlier, that's when it's very low on battery, so it did die at 4 hours and 48 minutes into the test. And the next device to go down was the iOS 15 Beta 1 iPhone 7 at 4 hours and 54 minutes in. And literally just 1 minute later, it's followed by the iPhone 7 on iOS 15 Beta 2, dying at 4 hours and 55 minutes. And just a little while later here, the iPhone 8 on iOS 15 Beta 1 dies at 5 hours and 12 minutes in. And a few minutes later, the iPhone 8 on iOS 15 Beta 2 also dies at 5 hours and 17 minutes in. And all right, so with the 3 newest devices being the only ones remaining in both iOS version tests, we'll finish off this hour of PUBG. And checking in after PUBG, once again, as to be expected, this application does take a considerable hit on the battery percentages, but the same trend here with very comparable decreases in battery percentage for both iOS versions. So with the first round of the tests complete, we'll head back to YouTube and stream the very same video for another hour. And of course, we'll make sure the quality is set to 1080p on all the devices. And a little while into the second round of YouTube streaming here, as usual, for whatever reason, the YouTube application sometimes changes the quality back from our manual setting 1080p to an automatic setting. So of course I changed it back, and the same thing happened with Beta 1 a little bit later here as well. And of course we changed everything back to manual 1080p quality to keep everything even and fair. And 6 hours and 6 minutes in, the iOS 15 Beta 1 iPhone 11 dies. And 1 minute later, the iOS 15 Beta 2 iPhone 10R dies at 6 hours and 7 minutes in. And just a couple minutes later, the iOS 15 Beta 2 iPhone 11 also dies at 6 hours and 9 minutes in. And a little while later here, the iPhone 10R on iOS 15 Beta 1 also dies at 6 hours and 16 minutes in. So with the iPhone 12s being the only devices remaining, we'll close out the remainder of this hour of YouTube. And checking in after that, both devices are at 21%. As you can see, they both lost the same amount, 7% in that YouTube streaming test. So we'll head on over to Instagram for another hour of looking at stories and posts. And checking in after that, once again, very similar results here. And heading back to Minecraft next, and we'll see how long each of these versions is able to survive. And 8 hours and 15 minutes into this test, the iOS 15 Beta 1 iPhone 12 dies. And just a few minutes later, the iOS 15 Beta 2 iPhone 12 dies at 8 hours and 18 minutes in. So there you have it for the battery drain test. Of course, the results entirely depend on what you do on your device. But in regards to this test, things seem to be very comparable in regards to these two betas. So of course, next up, we're going to move on to the 12-hour standby test. So this test gauges how well these devices are able to hold a charge just asleep in standby mode over long periods of time. And this test also, of course, depends on a variety of factors. Of course, processes you have running in the background, notifications you're getting on your device, cell strength, and just a ton of other things. In this example, it's just a very controlled test with no SIM cards in any of these phones. They're all connected to the same Wi-Fi network with the same notification settings. So with all devices charged up to 100%, we're going to disconnect the power source, get rid of the cables, and we'll put all the devices to sleep here, and we'll just start the timer and let it run for 12 hours, and we'll check back in on them after that. And checking in after 12 hours, as you can see here, basically no real substantial differences at all in regards to this as well. So in terms of the things that we tested today, it seems like Apple's holding steady in regards to battery performance on iOS 15 Beta 2 in comparison to 15 Beta 1. And once again, share down below in the comment section. I'd be curious to hear your guys' experience with iOS 15 Beta 2 or Beta 1 or both in regards to battery life. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.